Hello and welcome to this session in which we will discuss Regulation SX. Regulation SX is part of the US SEC, which is the Securities and Exchange Commission regulation that require public company to disclose what type of information? Qualitative non-financial information. If you remember, in a prior session we looked at Regulation SX. In Regulation SX, it mandate the revelation or the disclosure of financial, like financial statements, balance sheet, income statements, so on and so forth. Regulation SK is qualitative. Qualitative means non-financial information. It covers information such as business overview of the company. What are they in the business in? Risk factors, MD&A, management analysis of financial information. Those topics you will see in the annual report, but those topics are other than the financial statements. So think of them as supplementary information, important supplementary information. Now, as far as the CPA exam is concerned, you need to be familiar. You need to recall these items. But think of the items that could go on the annual report. This is what SK is, specifically non-financial information. The purpose of SK is to provide investors and the public with a comprehensive understanding of the company's overall situation, including management strategies, risks, and future prospects. And if you read the MD&A, management discussion and analysis, it touches all those three: management strategies, risk, and future prospect. And on a regular basis, the SEC updates Regulation SK to align with evolving market practices and investor needs. Because what's going to happen every 5 to 10 years, the environment will change. As a result, they would require companies to disclose more information. A recent one is the ESG, environmental, social, and governance factor. That's required. Maybe 20 years ago, that was not required. This way, we ensure transparency and integrity in the US capital market. Once again, as far as the CPA exam, you need to recall what's the purpose of Regulation SK, what's the purpose of Regulation SX, and no major provisions of each. In this session, I'm going to go over the major provision of Regulation SK. There might be a lot of them. Don't be intimidated. Just you need to remember these topics in a form of an MCQ. Recall the topic. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, FarhatLectures.com. Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses, broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today. I'm going to break them down by items. For example, I'm going to go from items 101 to 105 and discuss the major items in each one. For example, items 101 to 105 under the regulation discusses specific disclosures for publicly traded company in their filing. For example, item 101, what you want to do is describe your business. What business are you in? This item requires a company to provide a detailed description of their business, including their main operation, segment, product, or services. You must also discuss your competitive environment, sources of availability of raw material, intellectual property, compliance with environmental regulation. You might also include information on the company's operational strategy, investment policy, other aspects that could affect its financial performance. Simply put, what do you want to tell the world about your business? Description of the business. Item 2 would look at description of properties, the properties that you have. Give us a description. Item 103 about legal proceedings. Are you being sued? Just tell us a little bit more about those cases. If your company involved in mine safety disclosure. And also you want to discuss risk factors as well, then that's item 105. Item 201 and 202 deals with securities. Item 201 and 202 require public companies to disclose detailed information about their securities. What are we discussing here? Well, market price, dividend, and common equity. This includes market information where securities are traded, NYSE, NASDAQ, which exchange. A performance graph comparing the company's shareholder return with market indices, how well your company is doing against the market indices. The company's dividend policy, do you pay dividend? If not, when are you planning to pay dividend? Do you have any plans to pay dividend? The number of stockholders, equity holders. Also, you want to have a description of all classes of securities, Class A, Class B, Class C, voting, non-voting, covering aspects like dividend rights, if you have any dividend rights. What's your voting rights? Holding stocks. Maybe you own the stock, but you have no voting rights. For example, Google stocks, you have no voting rights. Redemption provisions, transfer restriction, and tax consequences to having the securities. And these disclosure will provide vital information for investors, helping them do what? Understand the capital structure of the company, the potential risk and return associated owning the stocks. And this is crucial information for investment decision if you're an investor. And this is item 201, 202 deals with company securities. Just know what 201 and 202 company stocks. Let's look at item 301 and 308. It's a list of items. Selected financial data. Companies must present key financial data for at least the past 5 fiscal year. Net sales, income, total assets, long-term obligation. Supplementary information, MD&A, management discussion and analysis. This is important. You'll have one whole session about this in a separate recording. Item 304, changes in and disagreement with accountant, or specifically with your auditor. You have to disclose this. Disclosure about market risk, information about exposure to market risk like interest rate, foreign currency. And usually you can disclose this in the MD&A as well. Disclosure about the company's internal control and its effectiveness, and internal control over financial reporting, information about the effectiveness of internal control. Basically, 301 and 308 deals with internal control, MD&A, this is what you need to know, supplementary information, selected financial data. You're asking about 306. 306 used to be about selected financial data. Items 401 to 407 would involve information about directors, executive officers, including their names, ages, position, business experience, basically their resume, family relationship that's relevant to the investments. 402, their compensation. So think about, when you think about 401 and 407, think about the executives. And I have this picture here, kind of make you think about the people who are in charge, their compensation, the CEO, the CFO, the 3 other highest paid executive officers, including their salaries, bonus, stock options, and other incentive. Ownership details of the company's securities, if they own stocks in the company, especially more than 5%. Disclosure of transaction exceeding 120,000 involving the company and related person. Compliance reporting by officers and 10% beneficial owners regarding their transaction and company securities. And disclosure regarding the adoption of code of ethics for principal executives and financial officers, as well as 407, information about corporate governance, including directors' independence, board committees, nomination processes, and shareholders' communication with the board. When you think of 401 and 407, they deal with what? Executives, directors, CEO, CFOs, their position in the company, their ownership in the company. This is the main idea that you will need to remember. Item 501 to 512, it's a list of items. Here we're looking at basically the prospectus information requirement for the cover page. How the cover page should be of the prospectus, including registrant name, securities offered, and key data. This is if you are going public or raising money. Information for the inside front and outside back cover of the prospectus. So 501 and 502 deals with the prospectus. A summary of the registration statement and discussion of significant risk factor. Disclosure about the use of proceeds. This is if you're trying to raise money. You need a prospectus. Information about how the offering price was determined. How did you determine the offering price? Here what you're looking at is specifically raising money. It means you're dealing with IPO, 501 and 502. Disclosure about potential dilution from different classes of securities if you raised more money through different securities. Information about securities being sold by current security holders, people who currently own the stock. Detailed on the distribution plan. How are you going to distribute the stocks? Interest of names, expert, and counsel in the company. SEC position for liabilities under the SEC Act. Cost associated with the issuance and distribution of securities. And various undertaking required for the registrant, such as updating the prospectus. So when you think of 501 and 502, think of the company's prospectus. We're trying to do what? Raise money. Items 601 are called the exhibits. Basically, what do you need? What's included here? Exhibits. Exhibits means documents. Documents, companies' charters, bylaws, material contract, financial statements, material contract, articles of incorporation, right of security holders, legal opinion, voting trust agreement, material plans. Again, just those are the exhibits, document. Items 801 and 802 deals with industry specifics. For example, 801 is reserved. It can be reserved for any industry. 802 is for oil and gas producing activities. It applies to companies in the oil and gas sector. They require disclosure about the reserve, proved under undeveloped reserved, operation and development plan, drilling and production activities, delivery commitment. Again, dealing with oil and gas industry, as well as pricing and cost. These provisions ensure transparency in the oil and gas industry, providing investors with critical information. Now you could have industry guides for other industries other than gas, oil and gas sector. Let's take a look at a multiple choice questions from Farhat lectures. Again, those questions are basics. You need to recall basic information. So the question here, it's what's the primary purpose of Regulation SK as mandated by the US SEC? What is that? Is it to regulate the financial transaction of public companies? Is it to regulate the transaction? Part of it could be, but is that the primary purpose? I would not think so, but let's look at B. To ensure public companies disclose qualitative, non-financial information? Yes, this is basically a wide umbrella that explains Regulation SK. But let's look at C and D. Is it to oversee the merger and acquisition process of public companies? It might. In some of its aspect, it might. But is that the primary purpose? I doubt it. To enforce environmental regulation on public companies? No, it deals with you want to disclose information about your environmental regulation, but not to enforce it. Regulation SK doesn't do that. Regulation SK is to ensure public companies are disclosing qualitative non-financial information that's going to help the investors make a better decision. So the SEC oversees financial transaction and certain aspects of merger and acquisition. Also, they're increasingly focused on environmental disclosure. But that's not the primary purpose of Regulation SK. You want to know the primary purpose of Regulation SK? It's to ensure that public companies disclose qualitative, non-financial information about their business, risks, and management's analysis. Why? To facilitate informed decision by investors. What should you do now? Go to Farhat lectures, look at additional MCQs. That's going to help you understand these topics. Once again, this topic is tested from a recall perspective, basic memory. And I try to make it as easy as possible. Invest in yourself. Good luck, study hard, and of course, stay safe.